Hello, audience, and welcome to the One Cell, One Light radio show. Today's topic, which is our eighth show, I want to welcome our guest, who is Mr. Dennis Scheller, and he's going to talk and share information with us on micronized zeolite and its therapeutic benefits. And then in the second hour of our show, we'll have oxygenated olive and coconut oils, their health benefits with Miss Nancy Kersey. Dennis, I want to thank you for being a guest on my show and bringing this information to the public so that we can share current research and endeavors in healthcare and how it's also being used, micronized zeolite and other zeolite applications in cleaning up environmental pollutions within our environment.
Thank you, Dr. Hildy, for having me on the show. It's an honor and privilege to be able to share today. Where would you like me to start?
Well, I would like you, because I know you've made a comment in the interview, which is our text and our promo for our show, is that years ago you made a decision to take the role of health into your own hands, and through this, taking your responsibility for your own health in your own hands and using your research and your judgment calls to better your own health, and through this, I'm going to say journey and adventure in health, you were able to find zeolite. So if you can give us that, not the history, but the history of how zeolite became important to you and what is micronized zeolite, we'll proceed from there, okay?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hildy. Basically, what I've been looking for the last 10 to 15 years is a really good remove product, something that could take out harmful heavy metals, aluminum, a lot of the chemical toxins that we're being exposed to today, and even radioactive particles. And so as I started doing my research, I found out about a negatively charged mineral called a zeolite, and there's 49 naturally occurring zeolites in nature. Basically, zeolites are formed by volcanic action. When volcanic ash and lava hits seawater, it can form a certain type of crystalline structure. And this particular zeolite that we're going to talk about is called clinoptilolite. It's been given GRAS status by the FDA, by the way. And clinoptilolite actually is one of the most researched and popular classifications of zeolite. It has been used for over 800 years in traditional medicine in India, in China, and throughout Asia, Russia, New Zealand, and Australia. And it's also well established that clinoptilolite strongly binds to heavy metals such as mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, nickel. These metals not only serve no biological role, but they're highly toxic, and there's also evidence that a dietary intake of clinoptilolite may strengthen the immune system. So this is what got me kind of started looking, and then from there I wanted to try to find the best zeolite product to put in my body.
Right, and I know that even the Sloan Kettering Institute for Cancer Center has done intensive, excessive research in zeolite and has also looked at it for its treatment in diarrhea, anti-cancer therapy, as a potential in the term of antioxidant, and as you said, an immune enhancer. To bring forth, and it has a very unique property. This mineral has. Years ago, I worked with a colleague for a number of years, Dr. Bruce W. Holstead of the World Life Research Institute, and he always said the antidote comes from the sea. So when you mentioned the salt water and the volcanization, meaning from volcanic ash, mixing together where zeolite is made, it is very important for the body because it has a natural buffering content. And also for the audience, even though zeolite may be is a composite of hydrated alkali aluminum silicate, the body sees it as the whole. It's not where aluminum necessarily is breaking off. So that's why, as you mentioned earlier, Dennis, in the show, where you got involved with heavy metal detoxification, and in particular looking for detoxification of aluminum. Sometimes they attract due to the bond angle and to the valence charge on it.
Well, what I wanted to let everyone know, again, these are one of the only negatively charged minerals in nature, and the minerals have a unique cage-like structure. They've got pores, tunnels, and channels running through them. They look a lot like a honeycomb, except you'd have an 8-sided next to a 10, next to an 8, next to a 10. Right. And even on a particle size such as a micronized zeolite, which say it would be 1 micron square, you'd have about 60 to 80,000 of these tunnels and channels running through. And if you had a gram of activated micronized zeolite, and you'd have to suspend it in a solution because the particle sizes are so small, you open up the jar and they would just blow away. 1 gram of this has a surface area of 90 square feet. And the reason these things are so important today, I believe that we are being bombarded with so much toxicity in our world today. We've got thousands and thousands of different man-made chemicals. We've got lots of heavy metals and harmful heavy metals and aluminum and all kinds of things that we're being hit with every day. We're breathing them, eating them, drinking them, and stuff is being absorbed through our skin. And so, but they're coming in so fast, our body doesn't have a lot of natural pathways of removing these. Our livers and our kidneys are being overworked. And therefore, a lot of these things get sequestered in our body, and when they start reaching critical level, they cause disease. And that's why I'm so excited about this, because if we can remove these things that don't belong in our body, and it just so happens that all these bad things happen to have a positive charge, like mercury has a positive 3 charge. And it's very small. It has a great affinity to the zeolite, and radioactive particles have a positive charge, and they have a great affinity to the zeolite. So the zeolite attracts them like a molecular magnet, if you will, and then 2 to 6 hours later you're excreting it safely out of the body. And the zeolite does not have a nutritional value, so it can't store in the body. It goes in. They can actually measure how much you're taking and how much comes out. Within 6 hours, they've actually captured every bit of it that's gone into your body, so it doesn't store up, it doesn't build up, it's safe for long-term use. It takes a lot of pressure off the kidneys and liver. And you did mention that aluminum was part of the structure. Well, there's a lot of chemical compounds out there by themselves can be very dangerous, but when this is fused with the high heat and the pressure and stuff, it's fused together with magnesium, aluminum, silicate, hydrogen, and oxygen, and it forms this crystalline cage-like structure. It's just about as hard as a diamond, and you'd have to heat it to over 1,000 degrees for 5 hours to break the bonds. And none of our bodies get that hot. So the aluminum and stuff that's in our body that doesn't belong there, it will attract to it and remove it from our body.
Right, and I'm so glad you addressed that because I do not want our audience to think that because it has an aluminum compound, silicate in it, that it necessarily is not harmful. It's really like the new technologies in nanotechnology, like a nano cage. It will absorb it. I know they've done a lot of work by combining boron with it, just as you said, with the magnesium in that boron, and even diatomaceous earth with zeolite, so that it can act as a better cage to couple these toxins that are in the body. And it's just like Dennis said, audience, the whole goal for this show and anything that I personally am involved is to get the body's burden of the toxins out, because we are totally overwhelmed with toxins, and it's time to come out.
Well, we've been doing a lot of research, especially, the big concern now is all the radiation that's, coming over here from Fukushima, and we've also got a lot of low-level radiation from our own reactors here in the United States, tritium, which is kind of a radioactive hydrogen gas, if you will. And once these particles get inside the body, and one of the studies I was just looking at a couple days ago was saying in Seattle, for instance, they were finding that an average of 5 hot particles of radiation were hitting the average person in the Seattle area. And where we are on the West Coast, we're probably getting hit with between maybe 2 to 5 hot particles a day. Just one of these hot particles of radioactive material, because it could be strontium, cesium, plutonium, some of the other isotopes, could cause cancer in the human body. And if you have a weakened immune system and everything else is building up, this micronized zeolite is the only way, if you've got that lodged in your lung tissue or lodged in your brain or a different part of your body, this is the only way I know of that we can safely and effectively remove it, and remove it very quickly. And so I'm really excited about that. And the side benefit of removing these toxins from our body, your pH is going to be balanced, You're going to be eliminating free radicals and oxidative stress. You're going to stabilize your immune system. All your other nutrients are going to be that much more absorbable and more effective. And it'll even keep glucose. People with a type 2 diabetic situation or even type 1, glucose will typically stick inside the blood vessel walls and the optic nerve. It prevents that from happening. It kind of drags glucose around, so it keeps it flowing in the body.
And that glucose is really a glycoprotein, and that glycoprotein forms on the optic nerve or into the lungs, which is 7 square meters of surface area versus our skin is 2.5 square meters, is usually, from what I've found in the last, in the years of being a toxicologist and other related fields, has been from some type of exposure environmentally, whether it's pesticides, heavy metals, or any of this. In particular, pesticides, weed killers, etc., can initiate diabetic-like symptoms. Thus, you get into that realm because these chemicals can be lodged on your sensors for the immune system or cause a natural reaction for your body to produce the glucose with the protein so that it encapsulates the toxin. And that's the whole goal is with the body. Not only see it as everything is food, but encapsulate it, compartmentalize it, so it will not interfere with the function of the body because the body wants to survive no matter what. And if you can remove the toxins, bring it out, balance those sugars, etc., then you have a good interaction. And then what happens, and you've seen this, I know, Dennis, is as you get the body burden of your temple clean of the toxins and you're on the path to health and well-being, you end up looking younger, feel wonderful, and you get spry, as I call it, okay?
That's correct.
And I know with the studies that you've been involved of watching zeolite and its use, it removes a lot of the toxins. I was very interested in, because I've done a lot of work in 2-part polyester resins and resin materials, in particular acrylonitrile years ago with the acrylonitrile trials, because there was individuals that worked in that environment in a plant, and they all got testicular cancer, which was related to the acrylonitrile exposures. The thing is, acrylonitrile is in the family of the nitrosamines in those categories, and zeolite was very effective in this Sloan Kettering Memorial Cancer Center study in removing nitrosamines. So I thought that was very interesting, because it wasn't a heavy metal, but it had a high valence charge, just as, like you said, with the charges of the different compounds, it works very well, in this cage. And audience, if you ever look at the chemical composition of zeolite, you'll see that it looks like a cube with, as Dennis said, a honeycomb molecule on it, just like a cage, in an appearance. So I think this is wonderful that we're sharing this information.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that, because you were commenting how it can remove nitrosamines. It can also remove dioxins, benzene, xylenes, pesticides, herbicides, and VOC. And again, the reason it's doing this is because of the charge. It's basically sharing an electron with the zeolite on the outside. Now, these compounds, these chemical compounds, are too large to fit inside the pores and channels, so they actually sit. There's 2 different sides of the zeolite that have that high negative charge. They actually sit on the side of it, and they'll share an electron, so it can still remove it from the body. And what I'm really excited about with the zeolites, because these things have been on the earth for millions of years, capturing toxins from the air and from the groundwater and stuff like that. So when you mine the zeolites, they're already 70 to 80% full, the cages. But that's why the particular product I chose is been activated, and all this activation means is this particular company chose to clean out the cage so it would have more surface area. It can actually take out 9 times more garbage out of the body that doesn't belong there because it's activated, and they have a proprietary process for doing that. And the other thing that's unique about this is the only zeolite product that I've found so far that's truly micronized. The average particle size is between 1/3 of a micron and a micron, so it can easily get into the bloodstream and float around through your body and take stuff out systemically. And another thing that we never talk about is apoptosis, a mechanism we all have. It's basically cellular suicide. As we form mutated cells, this P21 repressor oncogene kicks in, and these cells die, and the immune system removes it. Well, these cells start going amok because there's so much sludge and toxins in our body. The zeolite will actually enter into these mutated cells because it has a permeable cell lining, and it can remove what's causing the problem and restore apoptosis in the body. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah,
but if you're not in a micronized product, you're not going to be able to see this happen. And we have so much evidence with hair analysis before and after, like a 60-day period. We've seen a reduction of uranium and mercury in people's hair analysis as much as 75%, just taking 30 to 40 drops a day over 60 days. And that is tremendous. I mean, we see the heavy metals dropping straight across the board. And there was a coal miner study where it also shows this definitively, where they were measuring the amount of heavy metals coming out in the urine, and that study is actually published. You can see that published study in a peer review publication on ncdsupport.com.
Mm-hmm. Now, in reference to the coal mine, because with coal mining there is also uranium can be there, radioactive nucleotides, and their daughters of uranium, like radon, etc. Also, that particulate of coal dust, which normally goes into a disease pattern upon exposure into the lungs of emphysema or black lung, coal miner's lung, etc. So with it being effective on that, to even reduce the body burden so that they have a larger lung capacity, it's very good. And then also, because of this reaction with the glycoproteins, I'm calling glycoproteins the glucose with the protein versus just the glucose. That whole area, when you have a buildup of glycoprotein, you do not produce, or it inhibits the production of glutathione, which is so important in cellular respiration of the lung, so that you do not have, as you said, apoptosis of the body, but in particular of the lung tissue where it dies off.
That's
so
exactly
it's very
right.
good. Very good that this is coming in, because we're in the age where through science and technology, asbestos is now a medicine, so and we've all known the effects of that with mesothelioma. So having good products, or having the science behind the good products, is very important, I personally feel, in removing these toxins. Because I want to also emphasize, you mentioned that the micron size and its relation that it absorbs into the blood so that it can remove the pollutants. And for our audience who may not know, you get new blood formed physiologically in your body within 7 to 10 days. So as you're cleaning up your blood, which is just over a week, you will notice that there will be more oxygen reduction in the buildup of carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide in the blood, so that you will be able to breathe better. At the same time, once the blood is cleaned up, then the organs will start to dump once you are removed from whatever the source is. But in this case, you would be taking an internal substance to the zeolite to remove it. So new organ tissue is 3 months. So when you're on a program of whatever you're using with your healthcare provider, or taking, your own public health into your own hands, it's very important to remember those facts, because you have to do proportional so that you know that you can release the toxins as it comes out, at the same time supporting it, meaning your body.
Yeah, I think that is so true, Dr. Hildegarde. That is so important, because a lot of times people, they get impatient, especially if somebody's taking the zeolites for therapeutic. They've maybe they haven't taken care of their health real well all their long, or they're depending on their doctor to do it, or whatever, and all of a sudden they've got a health condition. Well, sometimes people are expecting a miracle in 30 days. Well, it's going to take the body, you break a bone, how long is it going to take for that bone to mend and heal properly? So it's going to take, like you said, that 3 months, that 90 days for those organs to start repairing and making a new copy of itself, which is exciting. But if you're cleaning up everything on a cellular level or systemically, you're going to have a better copy of your DNA, and you're going to be able to produce a better you.
Right, and that's it, and that's the purity of you, the true body of you, and that's with anything. I mean, all of a sudden someone may have cancer or something, but what did they do all their life to clean their body and to make it healthy? A lot of times nothing, and then you can get into the debate of processed food, all this other factors in the environment. But the main thing, too, is one is this zeolite removes the heavy metals and the toxins, which are in a variety of, I'm going to call it highly aromatic compounds, because I know it's even done a study in China in removing benzene after exposure. So that's a very strong aromatic, but at the same time it has a continually sharing an electron because it's a very unique compound in itself, benzene is. But where I'm going with this is that if you don't take responsibility of cleaning up your own body, it takes longer for good products or good results, even if it's eating organic salads a day. It takes a while for the body to absorb it because it's so much toxin in the body. And also the consumption of alcohol. The more you drink or the more you have of that type of compound enhances a lot of toxicities and the mechanisms of cellular destruction. So if you're not removing the toxins from your body and you're, I'm going to say, consuming alcohol, it interacts synergistically so that you have more of a toxic effect over time.
Yeah, well, I'd like to address that also. I mean, most of us, we maintain our cars and our homes to a degree, and we take a shower every day or every other day, but we're not really taking a shower on the inside of our bodies. We're concerned about our appearance and our outer body, but we're just, and I think we all have a tendency of thinking, it's never going to happen to me. I'm fine, I'm feeling good now, and things start deteriorating so gradually. I don't think a lot of people really realize how, before you know it, their health is totally out of hand. And that's why I think good nutrition is important. There's only 4 things that can cause disease in the body: buildup of toxins, lack of nutrition, stress, and EMF. So you start mitigating all those things, a healthy body is going to be able to stay healthy, and it's going to be able to heal itself more effectively. And there was another thing I wanted to address a little bit earlier. The thing I like about the zeolites is once they capture and contain those toxins as they're excreted, they're never being released back into the environment again. They're trapped in that cage, and that's always been a concern of mine with other type of toxin removal. Well, it's just going to go right back into the groundwater again, or right back into the our environment, back into the air, whatever. And this way, any toxin that is captured in the zeolite is going to be trapped and contained, until eternity.
And that's very important because I've seen over the years professionally of how prescription pharmaceuticals, in particular in the category of endocrine disruptors that are used in formulation, being dumped down the toilet, and now it's contaminated the water sources and literally not being monitored, and then we wonder why children have developed breasts earlier, or you have even males having breasts now, development enlargement. There's a lot of factors going out there. So when you have something that captures it, as you say, in the cage, and then does not put an environmental threat out there with the toxin, it's very, very good. And have you noticed, have you like on a lot of supplements, or that they, when you have heavy metal, you'd recommend. Usually, I do as a healthcare provider recommend, kelp and all these other nutrients to bind it, to the larger molecule. But possibly the combination of those types of natural health, nutritional supplements would be beneficial together. What do you think?
Well, I believe so.
Separately.
you want to make sure you're getting enough iodine in your diet every day, unless you're extremely sensitive to it, and to keep your thyroid saturated. But there's certain areas of our body where heavy metals just seem to gravitate. Like mercury specifically has an affinity for brain tissue. Cadmium has an affinity for lung tissue. Lead typically displaces calcium, magnesium, and goes into our bone matrix. And so what's happening is, we're starting to get brittle bones and things like this by taking the zeolites, and as these harmful heavy metals and stuff are being removed, then the calcium, magnesium can get back into the bone matrix, bone density can improve, organs can regenerate, just like we mentioned earlier. But I just haven't found a way. Everything works better when you're taking the zeolites, but I haven't found a way of taking the toxins that we're being bombarded with on a daily basis out quicker, more effectively, and just think a broader spectrum of toxins, if you will. You've got the heavy metals, you've got the aluminum, you've got the radioactive particles, and the majority of the man-made chemical compounds. I just don't know of anything that can be better than taking clinoptilolite or this type of zeolite to remove product. And any zeolite product is going to be beneficial in the human body. I chose this particular one because I wanted to get into my body systemically, and the fact that it was activated, the toxins were cleaned out, it was going to take out more toxins. So that's why I've selected Natural Cellular Defense. I just believe that's the best zeolite product that I've seen for human consumption on the market so far.
Right, and I know it's been, that particular category of zeolite has been approved, as you stated earlier, on the FDA for its use in natural supplements, et cetera.
Oh, you mentioned something about diarrhea earlier. It's in kale peptide. It's in Betty Crocker cake mix. The clinoptilolite's also used, from what I understand, in helping to scrub the oxygen and clean up the air in the space shuttle. There's so many. There's virtually today. Thousands of agricultural and industrial applications where they're using zeolites, and man has actually synthesized several different types of zeolites, commercially, and to use them in different industrial applications because they make good filters or good sieves. And so and we're just now really getting into this. The technology and the progression of what's going on. To me, it's very, very exciting. And I also am excited about the environmental cleanup. I actually happen to know a biochemist. His name is Rick Deitz. He's actually the formulator of this particular zeolite product that we're talking about, and he's involved in some different companies. In fact, him and Dr. Stuart Lonke have co-authored a book called Invisible Killers. It's a great book about environmental toxins and how they're affecting our body, but they've developed a method of cleaning up the waterways and stuff in our country and throughout the world. They can spray or drop powdered zeolites on lakes or rivers, if you will, and as the powdered clinoptilolite settling through the lake, it's going to pick up all the harmful heavy metals and the VOCs and all the pollution that's in there. If the fish eat it, they're going to get cleaner. A little film of it will land on the bottom of the lake or the water source, and it'll keep it clean for several years. And this, to me, was real exciting when I heard about this. But again, it's one of those things that, you got to go through all the red tape and the regulation and the funding and this and that. But, the technology is here for us to start cleaning up our planet. We just need to get more proactive and start doing it.
Right, and I agree with the cleaning up of our waters, especially after we have natural disasters like we saw in Katrina. We're seeing in Missouri with all the mold that is coming out of those and the people that have been exposed. Even in the simple mold that comes in wheat, there are studies with using zeolite to remove aflatoxins, which are really
That's correct.
The mycotoxins, again, which are the chemical waste of fungi.
We've seen it move aspergillus and the toxins produced by the fungi and the mold and things like this, and that to me is really exciting.
Yeah, and also I want to share, you mentioned earlier about dioxin, and we know that there's many veterans and other individuals, even when they were doing the research studies in Puerto Rico for Agent Orange, Agent Purple, Agent Green, Agent White, and many of the people that are now professors or executives down there in companies, were affected because that was in their early career. The thing is, with it acting as a cage and removing these dioxin or any of these types of chemicals, because dioxin is known to be highly carcinogenic because it is, as a small molecule, can easily get into the nucleus of the cell and into the DNA. And please, audience, remember that the DNA is your template. It can be covered with other foreign DNA, or it can be covered with a chemical, or it can cause the sound and the light, that's how the cells talk to each other, to send the wrong signal. So you can have birth defects, or you can have turning off an enzyme that leads to a disease. And the number one cause of mutation in a body is radiation and chemical. Chemical will bind, as you stated earlier, to certain organs due to the valence charge of those organs due to the chemical composition, but radiation can go right on through. But if you have other chemicals present, it interacts, and then the mutation occurs not only with your natural flora, too, but also with your viral load. I'm going to call it your viral load, being if you had bad chickenpox, mumps, measles, etc. These viruses get into the cells, and then they interact, and then that's where you see a higher increase of brain tumors or a higher increase of toxins. I did a paper years ago with a colleague of mine, Scott Evans, and we were the first ones to ever do genetic studies on groundwater contamination, and that was in the early 80s under EPA when we were both at Martin Marietta. And what is nice is that things that you're recommending now, and especially with zeolite, Dennis, it's coming of age to clean up. I mean, zeolites have even been used with tetracycline. Tetracycline was the number one drug of choice used by many dermatologists to help young teenagers and adults with adult acne or childhood acne. But they forget to tell you if you're on it for a long dose, it makes your enamel turn dark and you get like gray teeth. So this would be very interesting if it helps in removing the body burden so that the calcium can be absorbed in the teeth and they can get white teeth again. I think there's many avenues for this.
Well, it can definitely improve that. It's been shown that, if you take the suspended zeolite in the liquid form and swish it around in your mouth, it'll help from plaque and tartar buildup on the teeth. And, of course, you're getting a little bit of absorption through your mucosal membranes, but most of it's being absorbed in the intestinal tract. You're getting about a 90-10 split. So you're still cleaning out the intestinal tract with approximately 10% of the activated zeolite, and the other portion, the other 90%, is getting into the bloodstream, and it's going through, and again, it's cleaning up the blood, and then the tissues are starting to dump more toxins out. It's getting to go into the mutated cells. It's getting into the brain and pulling out the mercury and the pesticides and stuff that are causing Alzheimer's and MS and ALS and things like this. Unfortunately, in America, we're just treating the symptoms of disease, but we're not really looking at the cause and then going after the cause. And if we can remove what causes the problem, then our bodies have a chance to heal itself. And I do want to make a statement that the zeolites will not interfere with anybody's prescription medication. The majority of prescription meds have a neutral charge. Some of them even have a negative charge. So there's absolutely no way that they can adversely interact with the zeolite. So, some people say, well, ask my doctor to take this, and, your doctor's not going to know anything about this. You need to ask the experts with the zeolites, whereas your doctor's going to be the expert on a few other things.
Right, because it's known to even absorb, prescription drugs like aspirin, phenobarbital, etc. So it is important if you're going to use any zeolite supplement that our audience ask their doctor, in particular if they're on chemotherapy agents. And why I say chemotherapy agents, because the majority of chemotherapy agents are based on the mycotoxins, which goes back to what we said earlier in fungus, that those are the waste materials. So they've been synthesized to kill cells which are hopefully the harmful ones. And so there may be an interaction, but it's very important that you discuss this with your oncologist or your physician or other healthcare provider that has that type of knowledge. From my reading on zeolite, the only thing that it interacted with, and that was in a controlled study, where it interacted with mice where they were doing skin grafts. It did not allow the skin graft to grow. And basically in my profession I would say it's because it blocked, I'm going to call it the cell signaling of how to graft it out, because it is capturing all those other types of materials that are used in grafts. Many people don't realize if you have a skin graft, there's a lot of other chemicals that are mixed with the tissue of your cells when you're getting a skin graft. So it wouldn't, in my theory, it wouldn't, in my mind, it wouldn't allow it to hold very well because there's chemicals there.
Well, that could be a good point. Depending on what exactly they're using to do the grafting, that could definitely be a concern. And what some of the doctors that have been using the zeolites on their chemo patients and stuff like that, what they would typically have them do is not take the zeolites or the NCD like 8 hours before they start their initial chemo treatment, and then start it, the day after they end it. So it has the full effect of the chemo. But it works really good in conjunction with it, and we've definitely seen it, keep people from losing their hair and having the really bad nauseating, problems that they have and a lot of the other side effects associated with that. And, let's get the residual poisons out of the body as fast as we can before it continues to do damage to the immune system and give the immune system a chance to build itself back up.
Mm-hmm. And I want to share, too, with the audience, in my early career when I was with OSHA, my first professional paper that I had to do was on asbestos and how it caused the different diseases due to the different 3 forms of asbestos. And I know there was a study done in between 1979 through 2003, which involved 892 men and women who were exposed to asbestos, and this occurred in 2 villages in Turkey. And the ones that took zeolite only had 2 cases of mesothelioma, which is where you have a cancerous tumor in the pleural lining of your stomach, okay, which can grow as size of a grapefruit. The thing is, the ones that did not take the zeolite, they had 44.5% of the whole village population deaths, which was 372 died of mesothelioma, which, again, I think it's very important, more research, not only research, but the application and occupational exposures to these diseases that are known to be caused by chemicals, so that the professionals or the coal miners or any of these individuals that can get exposed to compounds like asbestos or any of these type of compounds, so that they could reduce their body burden. Because I have seen professionally that 3 months after the retirement, in particular in the aerospace industry, where there is a lot of nitrosamines and a lot of nitrous oxides in tests and stuff, that people get sick and die of cancer when it's time for people to enjoy their retirement. That's what I'm saying. Versus working so hard over 20 or 30 years and not be able to enjoy it. They're fighting disease.
I brought that study up because, again, I think anything that you're doing, in conjunction with the zeolite, it is going to, again, increase your body's absorption of your nutrients and your food, again, balancing your pH. And a cleaner body is going to be able to stay healthy and heal itself.
Right, and that's it. And as you mentioned earlier, we're bombarded with so much pollution. We're continually, with radiation. And hey, plutonium is not going to go away. It takes 26,000 years. So this means the whole world is affected by anything, and it's take action on your own tempo and not wait for decisions. There are plenty of books out there, and I stress reading. I love libraries. And Dennis, you mentioned a very good book. If you don't mind repeating it again for individuals that might want to read more about zeolite, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, it's more along, making people aware of the problem. It's called Invisible Killers, and it's co-authored by Stuart Lonke, Dr. Stuart Lonke. I believe he's a pulmonologist in the LA area, and Rick Deitch. Very good book. You know, they've got a short version of it, but I've got the hard copy.
Oh, excellent! I'm going to get that for my own personal library and read more about it. Meaning the invisible diseases.
I was going to just mention mercury. I mean, we've been talking a lot about radioactive particles right now, and I think that's a really good thing to talk about, and it's just been absolutely huge, and I think we're going to see a huge increase of cancers in America and especially in Japan and different parts of Asia because of what's going on in Japan right now because of the reactor leaks. But the other thing is mercury is the third most toxic substance known to science. It is a heavy metal. It's the most non-toxic or most toxic non-radioactive heavy metal. And what it does inside the brain, it's amazing how it just tears up the nerve tissue and the sheath, the protective sheath around the nerves, and just interrupts, you know, the synapses and the firing of the nerves. And people don't realize it, you know, because the ADA still insists that amalgam fillings are safe, and that's 50% mercury, and the other 40% is silver, and then there's some tin and nickel and other things in it sometimes. But a typical filling will outgas over 1 trillion mercury atoms into the human body on a daily basis. Now that just scares me to death. And there's another website that people can go to, the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. It's a nonprofit group worldwide dedicated to exposing, you know, dental patients to the dangers of mercury. And it's been a huge problem. And their website is IAOMT.org. And there's some great videos there that you can watch and research that they have there on mercury toxicity. And the zeolites, of course, will take them out of your body.
Excellent. And also, people don't realize, not only with mercury but also with pesticides, but mercury in particular, because it's a compound that can be a gas, a solid, and a liquid at the same time, you know, with the vapors and everything, the fume of it. The thing is that number one, cause two, before you get into the demyelinization, which is basically your nerve fiber myelin being ripped and torn or made holes like you took a hammer and hit a pipe and damaged it. The thing is, it can cause brain swelling, which is hydroencephalitis, and in that process, you could have brain fog, severe headaches, etc., and a majority of people are not even looking at that. So because it can go right into the brain from 1 degree change of the meninges, which is in the back area of the neck above the occiput, where your head, your skull, and your neck combine, and also through the olfactory system of breathing it and getting into the front lobes of the brain. So it's very important that, as you mentioned with the mercury, because that's like the wild card next to radiation in toxicities and making things happen. It's the fastest thing to work with viruses. It's the fastest thing to, I'm going to say, potentiate the risk of any disease. And we are bombarded with it. Many people don't realize that not only in dental, but sometimes there's mercury or it's combination of mercurial compounds that are used in as a sanitizer, you know, for hands, etc. So you don't realize how you're getting bombarded every day unless you're taking charge of your body.
And then you've got the mercury, again, interacting with the pesticides and lead and aluminum, and you're creating super toxins in your body, which can be 10 times stronger than just the mercury by itself, and it's really a scary situation. And again, because it has that high positive charge in a small particle size, it has a really high affinity to the zeolite. So the zeolite will attract it and encapsulate it and safely remove it from your body. But we also have a problem with arsenic in our water supplies and in a lot of lumber and treated lumber products, and they replace zinc in our body, which are real important in our immune system in the zinc finger proteins. So again, you get rid of that extra arsenic out of your body, your immune system starts working better. You just see all these correlations. It's really exciting, and in my own opinion, that we're being exposed from mercury from coal-fired generation, and just normal power production does put a little bit of mercury into the atmosphere. We know that a lot of our fish and stuff, particularly the larger ones, have a lot of mercury in it. But again, the number one source that we're getting mercury from are from amalgams, but people that don't have amalgams, you can still get them from vaccines. Thimerosal is an adjuvant or preservative in a lot of vaccines, especially your flu shots and things like that. Now most of the vaccines for kids under 2, they're not adding thimerosal in it, but there's still a lot of other harmful toxins in these vaccines as preservatives and adjuvants, and the zeolite will help remove these so your body can stay healthy and it doesn't damage your immune system. And I've just seen this push kids over the threshold. I'm not going to say that it's a direct cause necessarily for autism or ADD, but it can, again, just increase that body burden enough to where now, this young child is dealing with these things, health issues that it didn't need to deal with.
Right, and vaccines have increased, meaning when you and I were kids, or that you might when you're little, you get like 3 vaccines. You got your polio, you got your diphtheria or tetanus, one of those categories. Right. But now the average vaccine for an individual under 2 years old is 40 of them. And so that is a tremendous body burden, and some of these vaccines are not only made with, I'm going to call it the preservatives, like you mentioned, the thimerosal, but the thing is they also use biofillers, et cetera, which are basically folding proteins or fibers, and then they release in the body. You mentioned arsenic, and I'm very happy you did, because arsenic, as I've stated on numerous shows that I've had, arsenic not only does it's effective, if you have too much of it, you die because it's absorbed in the stomach, and you can die from it, because it's like the movies Arsenic and Old Lace, right. Meaning it was ideal use prior to divorce, okay? But the thing is, it accumulates in the skin. So when you have it accumulated in the skin and you don't even know it, you go out in the sun, it reacts with the UVB, and you end up getting, you can get melanoma. The thing is that they have released just in the last 2 weeks, and I was going to cover it in one of my shows in July with our the Country Hen guest speaker, that arsenic is also used in the feed of chickens. So if you eat a meal of chicken a lot, you may have arsenic in the chicken, and it was allowed by for the use of that to kill mites, etc. So that might be another source of arsenic in your diet.
That's
without
true.
You realizing it.
And we should look for some alternative sources too. I mean, that's another reason, I guess, to eat organic or grass-fed or range-fed, as opposed to just the mass-produced. But, yeah, there is a high level of arsenic in the majority of chicken meat in the United States. But, again, we have the solution to the body pollution if we can take zeolite.
Right, and even, say, in these meats or anything, it might be a wash that is used with the zeolite or anything to help reduce that body burden, And I know, too, I learned this a long time ago from a friend of mine, Ron, who's big into agriculture, that if you increase the sugar value, the brick value within a plant, you don't have the infestation of the disease, like from grasshoppers or natural pests that we're going to eat the plant. So if you keep your chickens healthy, like you said, free range, they're carnivorous. They need a bug or two, out there, and it's good to purchase those types of food quality and put that on your demand for your own self and your well-being of your family.
That's correct.
Yeah. And have you, from your experience with the zeolite, have you seen new trends, meaning I know it is used in so many things, not only in natural products, but as you said, with the cake mixes, et cetera, this way. I know that in the sciences, as you mentioned with the NASA, and that it's also looking into the use of it with diamond properties for the alloy, which is in the zeolite, as you mentioned earlier, for even using it in synthesizing certain powders that can be better for combustion. In other words, that they have thermal properties so that they can burn easier, or that if they were to be a product that was for burn. Do you know anything of that?
I haven't studied that side of it. I mean, I've just heard a little bit about it, that they were looking at that technology, again, to make the burn a little bit more stable, or, just enhance it and, just make it more efficient.
Right, because a lot of that is in reference to using it in explosives, et cetera, this way so that it burns and doesn't go out, when they need to use it properly.
It could also help stabilize certain type of explosives and stuff like that, and not make them so volatile.
Correct, because, and that's in that type of technology, it's very important, the stabilization that way. Now, do you have anything new you want to share with the audience?
I have seen some zeolite added to a chocolate product, an organic, healthy, dark cacao. And the zeolite, I mean, imagine getting all the health benefits of chocolate. There's been over 1,200 studies done on that, the cardio properties, the lowering of blood pressure, and protecting the heart and protecting the skin, and slowing down the aging processes of the brain, and increasing the mood of the brain, and helping with depression and anxiety, and then adding zeolite with it. So every time you're getting the health benefits of dark chocolates, and really they're known for their antioxidants, a high ORAC score. Now you can detox while you savor the flavor of a wonderful chocolate.
Right. That's very important, because chocolate, especially the bittersweets or any of those type of chocolate from the cocoa bean, they have high amounts of vitamin B6, and we, in our bodies as humans, we store vitamin B6 for 5 years. So if you become deficient, you will have more pain, more cramping in those organs during menstrual cycles or any of this stuff. So that's very, very interesting that this is going to be a new development in combining that property with that compound.
Right, you're getting the extra B6 and B12. You're getting some a lot of extra flavonoids, and again, gram for gram, if you have a cold processed organic dark cacao, it has the highest ORAC score of any other food value on the planet. In fact, this particular chocolate that we eat, an 8-gram square has an ORAC score of over 37,000. It would be equivalent to eating 5.3 pounds of raw spinach.
Wow.
And it tastes good too.
That's a lot. I mean, Popeye would enjoy that.
Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask if anyone has any additional questions, or is it okay to give my phone number or my email address?
Not only phone number, but please, before we leave, give your website or any way that they can contact you so that they can ask you specific questions. I would love that.
Okay, again, my name was Dennis Scheller, Scheller, and we live in Central California in the mountains. My phone number is 559-760-3261, and my email address is real simple. It's my name, Dennis, with a middle initial A, Scheller, Scheller, @gmail. And a great website to do your own personal research on zeolite would be myncd.com/930522. And there's also a link there to the double-blind study, and where you can look at some of the ongoing research and stuff that's done with the zeolites. And there's a frequently asked question section there that's really good. Can really help educate people.
Great, and I appreciate that, Dennis, because I know that as there is more use of it in the environment, there's more use in the removal of toxins within the body, and also the combination of zeolite with other products, as you mentioned, with the chocolate and possibly with other nutritional supplements. It's going to be very good in not only detoxing, reducing the body burden, but assisting the body so that you can be the best that you can be. In any of this, before we leave the subject and go to our next guest, I greatly appreciate you being on the show and discussing this and sharing this information, because there is so much going on in the world today that I feel the more information that is out there, so that they can at least, meaning the audience, can go to like your website or any of these sources to find more information and read on their own. It is greatly appreciated that way.
Oh, I failed to mention they did use powdered zeolite, powdered clinoptilolite on Chernobyl. Now, they didn't do it right away in the very beginning because they were trying to solve the problems and, everybody's running around frantically, but eventually they dropped many, many metric tons of clinoptilolite on the site. In fact, the concrete cap that finally capped it is full of clinoptilolite. They were feeding the animals and people in the surrounding areas, for 100 miles around, zeolite cookies, and they was absorbing a lot of the radiation and stuff out of their intestinal tract, and it kept a lot of people from getting severe cancers and, kept a lot of people alive longer. And so they dumped tons of this stuff around Belarus and Ukraine, and I also am the understanding that they used it in 3 Mile Island. And I don't know if they know about it or if they're using it in Japan right now, but it would be great if this information gets over to them and if they can somehow mix that with the seawater and get that in the cooling water and stuff to absorb a lot of those particles so it's not released all over the world and we all suffer as a result of it.
Right, and also with the flooding that is occurring from the Missouri River, that in the Nebraska, where we have 2 main reactors that are burst in water, it may be prudent for using, as you said earlier on the show, the powdered zeolite packets, or I'm just calling it packets, these material in that area so that it can reduce the possible threat. It will not hurt the environment, so it will reduce the possible threat of other nuclear exposures.
I hope they look at that. Well, thank you very much for having me on your show, Dr. Hildegarde. It's been a pleasure sharing with you. I learned so much, and it was just great listening to you today and sharing with you today.
Same here. I appreciated it very much, and we're going to be going into our second half, and I thank you very, very much.
All right, have a blessed day. Bye, everyone.
You too, dear.
Informed, enlightened, alive and amplified. This is the Living Light Network.
And the pressure and stuff, it's fused together with magnesium, aluminum, silicate, hydrogen, and oxygen, and it forms this crystalline cage-like structure. It's just about as hard as a diamond, and you'd have to heat it to over 1,000 degrees for 5 hours to break the bonds. And none of our bodies get that hot. So the aluminum and stuff that's in our body that doesn't belong there, it will attract to it and remove it from our body.
Right, and I'm so glad you addressed that because I do not want our audience to think that because it has an aluminum compound, silicate in it, that it necessarily is not harmful. It's really like the new technologies in nanotechnology, like a nano cage. It will absorb it. I know they've done a lot of work by combining boron with it, just as you said, with the magnesium in that boron, and even diatomaceous earth with zeolite, so that it can act as a better cage to couple these toxins that are in the body. And it's just like Dennis said, audience, the whole goal for this show and anything that I personally am involved is to get the body's burden of the toxins out, because we are totally overwhelmed with toxins, and it's time to come out.
Well, we've been doing a lot of research, especially, the big concern now is all the radiation that's, coming over here from Fukushima. And we've also got a lot of low-level radiation from our own reactors here in the United States, tritium, which is kind of a radioactive hydrogen gas, if you will. And once these particles get inside the body, and one of the studies I was just looking at a couple days ago was saying in Seattle, for instance, they were...
You said an immune enhancer to bring forth, and it has a very unique property, this mineral has. Years ago, I worked with a colleague for a number of years, Dr. Bruce W. Holstead of the World Life Research Institute, and he always said the antidote comes from the sea. So when you mentioned the salt water and the volcanization, meaning from volcanic ash, mixing together where zeolite is made, it is very important for the body because it has a natural buffering content, and also for the audience. Even though zeolite may be is a composite of hydrated alkali aluminum silicate, the body sees it as the whole. It's not where aluminum necessarily is breaking off. So that's why, as you mentioned earlier, Dennis, in the show, where you got involved with heavy metal detoxification, and in particular looking for detoxification of aluminum. Sometimes they attract due to the bond angle and to the valence charge on it.
Well, what I wanted to let everyone know, again, these are one of the only negatively charged minerals in nature, and the minerals have a unique cage-like structure. They've got pores, tunnels, and channels running through them. They look a lot like a honeycomb, except you'd have an 8-sided next to a 10, next to an 8, next to a 10. Right. And even on a particle size such as a micronized zeolite, which say it would be 1 micron square, you'd have about 60 to 80,000 of these tunnels and channels running through. And if you had a gram of activated micronized zeolite, and you'd have to suspend it in solution because the particle sizes are so small, you open up the jar and they would just blow away. 1 gram of this has a surface area of 90 square feet. And the reason these things are so important today, I believe that we are being bombarded with so much toxicity in our world today. We've got, thousands and thousands of different man-made chemicals. We've got lots of heavy metals and harmful heavy metals and aluminum and all kinds of things that we're being hit with every day. We're breathing them, eating them, drinking them, and stuff is being absorbed through our skin. And so, but they're coming in so fast, our body doesn't have a lot of natural pathways of removing these. Our livers and our kidneys are being overworked, and therefore a lot of these things get sequestered in our body, and when they start reaching critical level, they cause disease. And that's why I'm so excited about this, because if we can remove these things that don't belong in our body, and it just so happens that all these bad things happen to have a positive charge, like mercury has a positive 3 charge. And it's very small. It has a great affinity to the zeolite, and radioactive particles have a positive charge, and they have a great affinity to the zeolite. So the zeolite attracts them like a molecular magnet, if you will, and then 2 to 6 hours later you're excreting it safely out of the body. And the zeolite does not have a nutritional value, so it can't store in the body. It goes in. They can actually measure how much you're taking and how much comes out. Within 6 hours, they've actually captured every bit of it that's gone into your body. So it doesn't store up, it doesn't build up, it's safe for long-term use. It takes a lot of pressure off the kidneys and liver. And you did mention that aluminum was part of the structure. Well, there's a lot of chemical compounds out there by themselves can be very dangerous, but, when this is fused with the high heat.
Hello, audience, and welcome to the One Cell, One Light radio show. Today's topic, which is our 8th show, I want to welcome our guest, who is Mr. Dennis Scheller, and he's going to talk and share information with us on micronized zeolite and its therapeutic benefits. And then in the second hour of our show, we'll have oxygenated olive and coconut oils, their health benefits with Miss Nancy Kersey. Dennis, I want to thank you for being a guest on my show and bringing this information to the public so that we can share current research and endeavors in healthcare, and how it's also being used, micronized zeolite and other zeolite applications, in cleaning up environmental pollutions within our environment.
Thank you, Dr. Hilde, for having me on the show. It's an honor and privilege to be able to share today. Where would you like me to start?
Well, I would like you, because I know you've made a comment in the interview, which is our text and our promo for our show, is that years ago you made a decision to take the role of health into your own hands, and through this, taking your responsibility for your own health in your own hands and using your research and your judgment calls to better your own health, and through this, I'm going to say journey and adventure in health, you were able to find zeolite. So if you can give us that, not the history, but the history of how zeolite became important to you and what is micronized zeolite, we'll proceed from there, okay?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hildy. Basically, what I've been looking for the last 10 to 15 years is a really good remove product, something that could take out harmful heavy metals, aluminum, a lot of the chemical toxins that we're being exposed to today, and even radioactive particles. And so as I started doing my research, I found out about a negatively charged mineral called a zeolite, and there's 49 naturally occurring zeolites in nature. Basically, zeolites are formed by volcanic action. When volcanic ash and lava hits seawater, it can form a certain type of crystalline structure. And this particular zeolite that we're going to talk about is called clinoptilolite. It's been given GRAS status by the FDA, by the way. And clinoptilolite actually is one of the most researched and popular classifications of zeolite. It has been used for over 800 years in traditional medicine in India, in China, and throughout Asia, Russia, New Zealand, and Australia. And it's also well established that clinoptilolite strongly binds to heavy metals such as mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, nickel. These metals not only serve no biological role, but they're highly toxic, and there's also evidence that a dietary intake of clinoptilolite may strengthen the immune system. So this is what got me kind of started looking, and then from there I wanted to try to find the best zeolite product to put in my body.
Right, and I know that even the Sloan Kettering Institute for Cancer Center has done intensive, excessive research in zeolite and has also looked at it for its treatment in diarrhea, anti-cancer therapy, as a potential in the term of antioxidant, and as